Hello, and welcome to our conversation with Illumio. I'm Alex Raven, CMO of COOLSPIRiT, and I welcome Trevor Deering along with me today. During the next 10 minutes, we'll be discussing how risk-based vulnerability offers the insight required to build a responsive security model. Trevor, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, my name is Trevor Deering. I am the EMEA Director of Technology for Illumio, and basically what we do is we help you contain any attacks that may come through ransomware or any other vector.
Brilliant. Right, let's kick off. First question, one of the key components of containing ransomware is identifying risk. What do Illumio mean by risk?
I think, fundamentally different resources on your system have a different amount of risk. So, that one of the classic things is that, that ransomware and other attacks use is the ability to, attack servers that aren't at the right patch level. And I know patching is a real challenge. And so there are ways using vulnerability scanners that you can sort of detect the risk associated with each of those servers. But the challenge is that what they're not doing is sort of showing them what happens afterwards based on a few other things. Because what we do is effectively we can import some of those vulnerability scores, and because we know how many servers each server is communicating with and how often, we can determine the actual risk that if there was a ransomware attack, the ransomware would get to that server. So for instance, if there was a server that wasn't patched and showed to have a high risk, if it's only connected to one other server, then probably the risk isn't very low. If you have a server that sort of shows up as a medium risk but is connected to 100 servers, we probably need to do some protection around that. So there's a lot of things that combine to be able to identify risk. And what we try and do is to produce a map that easily allows you to see that. So so really when we're talking about risk, it's a combination of things.
Cool. And you mentioned that map. How does that fit into the wider visibility story?
I think one of the important things with everything to do with understanding what's going on within your system is being able to visualize it. And whether you're a small organization with 10 servers or whether you're a multinational bank with hundreds of thousands, you need to be able to see that in the same way. And there's certain things you want to be able to see. So, you want to see which resources are communicating with other resources, which resources are allowed to, and which fundamentally are not allowed to do that communication. And also you want, in that sort of visualization, you want to be able to see the risk of each of your servers. So, it is about building a picture so that you can see effectively what may happen under attack. And that then allows you to build your security policies around it.
Cool. I guess visibility is important, but I guess, if there's no actions out of that visibility, it's just like watching your own house being burgled. How do you turn what we learn into tangible results?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think this is where technology has sort of moved on a bit, and really where Illumio has come to the fore. Because traditionally, if you were using, the way that you would do this before would be to use traditional firewalls, right? Firewall rules to be able to do that. And that, and for those of us who spent our life building firewall rules, we know how potentially complex that gets over a period of time. If you have a map and you can visualize these things, and you can effectively click on the map and apply a rule simply, one click of the mouse, and you've applied a policy, then that makes things much, much easier. And also, it's not just literally looking at a map and seeing the pretty pictures. If what you need to be able to do is also to have like a search function where you can sort of look for certain things that are happening, certain protocols that are running in the system you may want to stop. You may want to prevent your production system communicating with your development system. So there's lots of things that you can get from this that you can then turn into actual security policy.
Well, I guess The first thing you want to do is lock everything down, so everything's secure. But then nothing will work. So is there any sort of middle ground instead of locking everything down?
I think that's the balance. If you're the application developer, you want everything to be able to talk to everything. And I talk to lots of networking guys who want completely flat networks, but the security people want to be able to segment absolutely everything down to and lock everything down. So you sort of have to realize that sort of middle ground, and that's where identifying risk comes into it. So you have to make a decision about those sort of things, and that sort of gives you, there's things, for example, you want to be able to allow the appropriate resources to communicate with your core services like Active Directory or DNS or something like that. So what you need to be able to do is easily and automatically really is identify those core services and apply the appropriate rules to those so that everyone can use it. And as I said, and then on the flip side, you may want to stop the air conditioning system talking to the finance system. So you may want to apply a rule in that. So it is the risk, and being able to identify the risk and visualize it gives you that capability to be able to apply those policies much more sensibly.
And apply them calmly when required. You've got the information at hand to do everything correctly and purposefully at the time. I
think that's spot on, really.
Yeah, cool. And so, attacks are happening all the time. Different attacks, different methods, different names out there. The unknown, how can we contain the unknown? Does your system pick up the unknown really well?
Well, I think that's always an interesting piece, and any attack falls into sort of two parts, and the attacks are becoming more sophisticated, and what the bad guys are doing is literally going onto the dark web and they're saying, well, buy me they download a delivery method like Ryuk or one of these sort of droppers or something like that, and then they download the actual piece of ransomware that then will get delivered on top of that. So to a certain extent, because we know how ransomware moves around and we know the transport mechanisms it uses, to a certain extent, we can stop those happening, and we can stop the ransomware moving around. And one of the things there is to have some sort of threat intelligence feed, so that you can understand exactly what's going on in other places. And the second one is, we talk about the fact that we don't want to lock everything down, but if we're under attack, we sort of want to hit a big red button that does lock everything down. So it's a bit like, you see these shutters come down in banks during a bank robbery. We need to be able to do that. And so, being able to do that when you detect a new attack or there's something going on, and you want to sort of do that until you can identify exactly what it is and remove it. So, so there is that capability to sort of hit the button and block it, block as much as you need to.
Wow. And I guess IT teams, security experts, we're all extremely busy. And we may not be able to deal with something there and then that second. Is there ways of automating these processes we speak about? Yeah.
So within, there's a lot of those functions within sort of SIM systems, and especially now with source systems that we're seeing now, whether you have your own sort of automated system, a SOC, or whether you've outsourced that to someone else, there are processes that as soon as you detect those any of those types of attacks, that you can automatically hit that big red button. So it becomes part of that process. And it doesn't have to be the big red button. It could be that you purely isolate where you find that ransomware happens to be. So there's a huge number of options and automation options really coming along now.
Cool. To automatically be able to contain and stop the risk is just fascinating, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it does come down to, as we said, it's visualizing the risk, it's understanding what you want to do, and understanding how you can implement that sort of thing if there is anything happens. And that's to be honest, that's where organizations like COOLSPIRiT come into that process. It's that adding that level of knowledge that really helps.
Yeah, and associated products to answer every, if you talked about automation, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
right, well, thank you very much for your time. It's been intriguing, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.